Hey everyone, Steve Milloy here. The first atmospheric hoax was the ozone hole hoax. I am covering this today because the New York Times just published a puff piece plugging a new book from Susan Solomon, an atmospheric scientist formerly with NOAA who worked on ozone. The New York Times credited Solomon with playing a crucial role in solving the ozone hole. What a load of crap. And here's what you need to know about the ozone hole. The Earth is blanketed by a layer of ozone in the stratosphere. This ozone, which is to be distinguished from ground-level ozone or smog, protects us from potentially harmful levels of solar radiation. With the advent of NASA weather satellites in 1979, panic soon developed over the apparent detection of what was called a hole in the ozone layer over the Antarctic. There was no hole or thinning observed anywhere else, just over the unpopulated Antarctic. It wasn't actually a hole in the first place. It was just an inexplicable, localized thinning of the ozone over the Antarctic without any detectable effect on anything on Earth. Based on 1970s chemistry research reporting that chlorine in the atmosphere destroyed ozone, panic was soon fomented about emissions of chlorofluorocarbons, CFCs, which were then used as refrigerants. The panic resulted in the hasty ratification of an international treaty called the Montreal Protocol, the purpose of which was to phase out CFCs in favor of ozone-friendly refrigerants. The treaty came into force in 1989. The treaty was given the final seal of scientific approval when the researchers who discovered the supposed underlying chemistry between chlorine and ozone won a Nobel Prize in 1995 for their work. Since the Montreal Protocol came into effect, governments have been phasing out cheap refrigerants in favor of more expensive ones because of the supposed ozone hole. The Montreal Protocol is why it is so expensive to charge air conditioners and refrigerators. But decades of data now show the Nobel Prize was erroneously awarded. As it turns out, the chemistry that occurred on the blackboard and in the chemistry lab are not what actually happens in the atmosphere. While chlorine may destroy ozone on the blackboard, in the actual atmosphere, the ozone quickly reforms. You can see the results of that for yourself in this graph of NASA satellite data of the Antarctic ozone hole. The top graph shows the area of the ozone hole since 1979. The bottom graph shows the minimum thickness of the Antarctic ozone hole. As you can see for yourself, by the time the Nobel Prize was awarded in 1995 and before CFC emissions had been meaningfully reduced, the ozone hole had basically stabilized to what it is today. There is in fact no rhyme or reason between the dimensions of the ozone hole and changes in emissions of CFCs or CFC replacements like HCFCs and HFCs. There is no real-world evidence that refrigerants are at all related to stratospheric ozone or what's happening over the Antarctic. The 1995 Nobel Prize was erroneously awarded. There's a lot more to say, but in the interest of brevity, let me just add this. I personally heard Al Gore privately tell a knowledgeable audience in 2006 that the actual purpose of the Montreal Protocol was to show that an international environmental treaty was feasible. The Montreal Protocol was actually a demonstration project for the 1992 international treaty called the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change, which is the legal root of the climate hoax now sweeping the world. So the first atmospheric hoax was the ozone hole hoax, and it gave birth to the second atmospheric hoax, which we now call the climate hoax. If you haven't already learned this from COVID, we fall for government junk science at our own peril. Stay up with the latest on government junk science. Follow me on X @junkscience and on my website junkscience.com. Thanks for watching.